Welcome to the new Tewksbury Public Access Channel shows. This is our first show and it's a cooking show. And we are going to prepare a traditional Irish soda bread that I received from my dear friend Marie Sweeney, who received it from her friend Mary Noon. And we've made two versions of this bread. One is with wheat flour and the other one is gluten-free. And I found that the best gluten-free flour, when you're using a regular wheat recipe, is this 1-to-1 baking flour made by Bob's Red Mill. You find it in the grocery stores. Also, I want to introduce myself. I'm Joan Unger Harmon, and Marie Sweeney is my good assistant. And she's also, we're both from Tewksbury. Also, we have our producer, Donna Gill, who prepared this lovely corned beef dinner. Look at it, it's just beautiful. So, Marie, do you want to help me here?
I want to say, first of all, I'm happy to be the commentator and not the baker, because as people who know me know, that's not my forte. But Joan is a well-known baker and cook in the area, up and down New England, as a matter of fact. But before we start this, I'm going to go over what the ingredients are and what the utensils are that you need to make this. The very first thing we need to do is to make sure the oven is preheated. And the oven needs to be preheated to 375 degrees.
Excuse me, Marie, while you're doing this, I'm going to start buttering the pan.
All right, so Joan has assembled both the ingredients and her pans and spatulas and so on that she needs to make the dish. She has two bowls because she's going to put her dry ingredients in one and her wet in the other. But she has this beautiful Irish bread baking dish, which is a conversation piece, shall we say, Joan? As she's buttering the pan.
Which you can find, by the way, on Amazon.
Oh, okay. Okay. You can find just about anything there. All right, so she's getting her utensils ready. In the meantime, she has pre-measured the ingredients. And this is a very simple recipe. It's one of the reasons that the bread was made for so long and so far back. It's very simple. It requires 2.5 cups of sifted flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and a 1/2 cup of shortening. And Mary used butter, so that's what we're going to use. Then a 1/2 cup of sugar, a beaten egg, a pint of sour cream, and this is where the modernization of the soda bread recipe comes in, because it was traditionally just milk or buttermilk. And then you could add a cup of raisins. I prefer to use golden raisins, and you can see the sun-made golden raisins here. Now that's all pre-measured and laid out. Joan has buttered her dish. The oven is on. So she's going to sift together the 2.5 cups of flour. And sifters are hard to come by today. They're not necessarily a part of everybody's kitchen utensil stock. I mean, you can make do with a, what did we use one time?
Like a tea strainer, we used to call it.
Right.
But I got this at the Kitchen Collections up in North Conway. And it was hard. They were hard to find.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a good size, and you can squeeze it very easily. When my mother used to make her cakes and bread and whatever, and Joan will agree with it, we had a crank one. It had some kind of a red paint on the outside. It was metal.
It was chipping.
And but that's what they use. This was supposed to make it a lot easier. I don't know whether it does or not. But in with her. When she gets all the 2.5 cups of flour together, she will put the other dry ingredients. I want to say something about Mary Noon, who has, given me this recipe. She's not with us anymore. She was a great lady, but like me, she was no great cook. but she loved Irish bread. She loved the ambiance and the fun and the familiarity of having people around her dinner table. And many of them were Irish. As some of you may know, there were a lot of Irish immigrants here, particularly in the 80s and the 90s. And they were always welcome at Mary's table and probably in Mary's attic as well, but that, we won't talk about that. But she enjoyed company and she enjoyed Irish bread. And so she found this recipe, and what she had, probably from her mother, I don't know, was kind of a dry soda bread, which is more traditional. And she finally found one that made it maybe even a little sweeter as well as not so dry. And it was using the sour cream. Now, many people use buttermilk. My sister has my mother's soda bread recipe, and she has adjusted that by using buttermilk. I don't think it makes it as moist or rises as high, but you know, she does that. Now, why is soda bread so popular? It was very easy to make. It's made with baking soda and baking powder, which means you don't need any yeast. It's a bread that you don't have to knead. It's really mixing the ingredients together and putting them, you know, without much fanfare, into a baking pan and into an oven. My mother used to make hers. She used to bake hers.
I want to just show that by sifting it, I measured out 2.5 cups, and when I sifted it, I had that much left over. So it makes it.
It does make a difference.
Yeah, it makes it.
Make a difference.
Makes a
And it does aerate
Yeah.
the flour.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the longest part.
So you've got baking powder.
Soda and salt.
Okay. All right. And when you finish that, just put it aside.
So I'll mix it in with the flour, and I'm going to add this flour into it.
Right. I think it's a more freewheeling recipe than Joan is being very careful to follow all of the. But it's 2.5 cups of sifted flour, and you can put in your salt, your baking powder, your baking soda into it, so that's kind of sifted through. If you don't, I don't think it makes a big difference. But,
So we set this
but it does
aside.
make a difference that you sift the flour. So she's going to put her dry ingredients aside, and she's going to cream her sugar and her butter together. Now, did you measure that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I measured it before I put it in here.
And it's 1/4 cup?
Correct.
Half
a stick.
Softened, it's softened.
Yes. Well,
And she's going to put her sugar in it. And it's been a long time since I made anything where I had to cream the butter and sugar. That was the basis of
Yeah,
every
that used to
cake
be-
I ever
yeah,
made
it was-
when I was younger and doing
Which-
those things.
Which would discourage you sometimes from baking.
Right. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does. My
Okay,
mother
now
had
add the
a
sugar.
simple, basic white cake recipe that I use, and that was always how we started with creaming
I hate this.
the sugar and the butter.
This takes a while.
Yeah, it does. It does. And
This one.
that's, I think, one of the reasons that those big KitchenAid mixers became so popular is because you just kind of, people tended to dump everything in, and this takes a little, as we would say, elbow grease to
Yeah.
get it mixed.
Yeah, you had to have strong muscles before,
Right.
back in the day.
Now, we're getting into the wet ingredients, and that doesn't seem to be too wet, but what's going to happen is Joan is going to mix in a beaten egg and the sour cream. And the reason that she's doing it in a bigger bowl is because the dry ingredients are going to be folded into these wet ingredients when indeed they get a little wetter than they are.
Marie, would you speak about how Mary Noon used to demonstrate in Lowell at the?
Again, Mary was a very outgoing community activist person. She was very much involved.
Like you.
Well, I think that's why we were friendly. She went to Notre Dame, I went to Notre Dame, and her father was a local jeweler, and she worked for him. And But she was really into her community and her church. One of the things that she was founded was an organization in Lowell that was very much involved in saving affordable housing. And she was active in the church as well in their activities. And when the Lowell Folk Festival came to town in the 1980s, part of the activity of the Folk Festival was to have food demonstrations. They actually had a food tent, and it was ethnic food. And someone thought that this was a pretty good ethnic food, and who can make the Irish bread, do a demonstration. And of course Mary was famous for her Irish bread. Well, she did not want to do that. But she's very outgoing and community-minded, and so Mary did a couple of demonstrations. In fact, over here we have a picture. I have an actual picture of Mary doing the demonstration in the tent on Market Street in downtown Lowell. One of the times she did it, my mother did the commentary. And my mother, this was not my mother's kind of Irish bread. So she was kind of reluctant to do it, but she did it, and we had a good time, and people got to taste the bread. And
I want to interrupt for a second. So now that I've creamed the butter and the sugar together, I added the beaten egg, and now I added 2 cups of sour cream.
right. And that's the bowl with the wet ingredients right now.
So it's it is pretty simple. When you're doing it on the TV, it's not so simple, but it's when
Well,
you're
that's
home,
why
it
also
is.
why we have a finished bread ready to
That's
show
right.
everybody.
So now we have.
So
now
what
we
you're going to do now is you're going to fold in
the
dry ingredients. It's not, I strongly suggest you just don't dump them in. Put some in, mix it up a little bit, and and it's not anything you can do with a beater. It's definitely something that's done by hand. It's done with love. It certainly was done with love by Mary Noon and by my mother.
Well,
and my
I'm
mother
loving
would
doing this. I'm
make
loving doing this.
You are? Well, that's good. I'm
Because
glad that you
I'm
do.
very happy to have this cooking show.
Well, I know, and you've been
For
a big
like
person
more than 20
behind
years,
it.
I've wanted
you know.
to have something.
Did you mention what it's going to be called?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. You tell
Taste
them.
of the Town.
Tewksbury,
Taste of Tewksbury.
Tewksbury Taste of the Town.
I was trying to make some suggestions. I think Taste of Tewksbury, and then colon, whatever it is, Irish bread or Portuguese sweet bread or, whatever. I don't think it's going to be totally is it going to be all baking or is it going to be cooking?
No.
too?
People are going to suggest what they like.
Oh, that's
I hope.
good.
I hope they
That's
will
good.
suggest. I hope they'll reach
My rule
out
of
to
thumb
Brian
with
and tell
people
them.
who cooked was that some people are great cooks but awful bakers, and some are great bakers and awful cooks. You do both, and you do it very well. My
Thank
mother
you.
did both
Yeah.
and did it very well. So she's doing a really good job of getting it all the thing is to blend the ingredients together. And, she'll spatula off her,
Where
off
is it?
her
Here it is, right here.
stick to get it in. And when she thinks that that's pretty well blended, would be when that happens, it's a time to fold in an old term when you're cooking, fold in the raisins. And you can use regular garden variety raisins. I use the golden because I think that they're a little sweeter, and I like the way
They're
they
different
look.
colors, too.
And when the bread is
Colors.
baked and you cut it, getting ready to serve it, it just really looks really nice. I mean, the darker raisins do too, but this, I think, gives it an extra nice look. And as I mentioned before, there's no kneading of this bread.
And rise, and you don't have to let it rise.
And you don't have to let it rise.
Yeah.
There's no yeast, there's no kneading. And it's I'm not too much into chemistry, but it's the yeast action is replaced by the combination of the baking soda and the baking powder.
And we already did a preview, and we had some friends over, and we made both the regular flour bread, and we did the gluten-free. And they both, nobody could tell the difference. They were both very delicious.
And tell them what we did with the 2 loaves of bread.
We ate them all. Well, there were like 5 of us.
And it was nice. It served either little bit warm or room temperature. You're not going to serve it the way it comes.
And the
hot out.
butter that you love?
Right, and the butter that we put on it, and you slather this butter on, and it's this Kerrygold butter. You've got to get it kind of in a
Ball.
ball.
Yeah.
And you could stick your hands in it to make it, but it's darn sticky. But see how it's kind of coming to a ball there. Now, once you scrape that off and scrape that into it, you can just lift it up. You can lift it up with your hands and put it in there.
Okay.
But the Kerry butter is sweeter, richer, and it really makes, frankly, it makes the Irish soda bread much more like a dessert. And
delicious.
we're not offering any dessert with this today.
Now, tell some people put caraway
Some people put caraway in it. I think the caraway works better more with the more dry bread and not with this, so I certainly don't put caraway. It's one of those things, my mother didn't like caraway, so I don't include the caraway.
And some people
You've got
put
a lot more you
oh,
can
no,
get.
I'll get that.
Don't move it around too much.
Okay.
And you know what, it doesn't matter what the outside shape is, it's basically gonna be round, but I started to say earlier, my mother used to bake her bread in a cast iron skillet, and that was really the Irish tradition because they could just stick it into a fire with a cover on it and it would bake very easily. It's a simple bread. It's the kind of bread that we're gonna show you today, serving it as part of the traditional corned beef dinner. But it can be like a tea bread. It's sweet enough that I think it's best with a pot of
Coffee.
tea.
Okay. We're ready to put it in the oven now.
All right, so there it is. It's in the pan.
You like that?
Yes, I do.
Now, there's one more thing to do before we put it in the oven. We make a cross and we say a prayer.
Right.
And the
Mary
prayer-
used to say, "Please God, make this be good."
So that's and make the show be successful. I said two prayers. Okay.
You don't have to do it too deep, but you do need to do it from side to side, and you will see it when the bread comes out.
Now it's time to take it out of the oven. It's been baking for 50 minutes at 375 degrees. And it's time to put the foil over for the last 10 minutes. So take it out and the dish will be hot, so you need to put your gloves on or your mitts. And so 10 more minutes and it will be ready to take out and enjoy with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee.
Can I help you?
Yes, Marie, I think that. Yeah, okay, we don't want it to break. Yeah.
And so it needs to cool just a little bit before you plate it. The bread is cooled enough to serve. We wanted to show you the Kerry butter, and you can see the wrapper. It's easy to see, easy to find in Market Basket. I'm not going to open the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm just going to open it enough so that you can see it's a different color and maybe even a different consistency. So we have two breads now. We have the more traditional Irish soda bread with the cross, and then this is the gluten-free. As Joan has said earlier, it can be served, it's traditionally served with the corned beef dinner, which has been beautifully done by Donna. By the way, this is a red corned beef. New Englanders tend to like a gray corned beef, and the difference just is there are nitrates in the mixture where they corn the brisket for the red, and then there's no nitrates. It's strictly salt. Some people have said that New Englanders, they're dreary and they like a dreary looking corned beef. I don't know about that. I think they taste pretty much the same, although again that may be sweeter. So for the soda bread, the easiest way is just to cut it right in half, right? My hands are clean. And you can see when you cut it open, you can
Yeah,
see
how
the
pretty it
raisins.
looks, yeah.
You can see the golden raisins make it
Yeah.
just look a little bit. Particularly if you're going to use it as a tea bread, that's really the way to go.
And you might mention the pan that this was made in was more
Was it deeper?
It was
It was
deeper
deeper.
and a little more compact.
Right.
This one, the pan was flatter.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's the recipe calls for an 8-inch pan, and so it either
Yeah.
8-inch or 9-inch pan. So if we were going to serve this, and we would, it's like brownies. There are certain parts of it that people like
Yeah.
more. Some like the wedge.
Everybody liked both of the gluten-free
both of
and the
these bread.
regular. Yeah, they liked them both.
So there's a piece of bread.
I'll wash this off so you can cut the other one
You just
because they don't want to contaminate the other.
you just put butter all over it, and it's eaten with the corned beef dinner. And
But it's even very nice as a dessert.
that's why I was going to say that's why it's good as a tea bread, because it's kind of sweet.
Yeah, that can be if you want to cut. See
Right.
the difference.
I think we can cut it the same way. Let's do a kind of a wedge with this one.
Okay. I forgot to do the cross on that one, so.
Now it's still easier to do it this way. This is not the bread that you get at Market Basket, because this is a gluten-free bread. Again, it has the raisins in it. You can see there's a difference in the color of the
Yeah.
bread, of the flour that you used.
Yeah.
And again, you can put if you're not dairy-free as well, you can use the butter on that. So I think that we've offered something a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's traditional for Irish, but not
easy, and it's
easy.
easy. Yeah,
It's easy.
And the recipe will be posted
Right.
on the site so they can.
Right, with the ingredients
Yeah.
and the measurements and how you put it together. And we hope that everybody enjoys this Irish meal. The Irish would say at the end of a drink or with a good meal, sláinte. And that is all good wishes.
We want to thank you all for watching, and I want to thank our cameramen, Brian and Jason. They're just terrific. And they're pretty new with us in Tewksbury, but they're really good. We're lucky to have them. And I want to thank my dear friends, Marie Sweeney, and my other dear friend, Donna Gill, who is our producer, keeps us on the straight and narrow, and myself, Joan Unger Harmon. And thank you for watching. And let us know if you have any suggestions. Thank you.